Alright, so this post is coming a month late. Not late, but I needed a break after the last video, after all these videos. And, you know, I don't want to, burn myself out too much. So, trying to get back into this. This post is Gematria of Human Design. I wrote March 25th, 2015. And I was really, what's the word? Excited, I guess, by talking to and looking up the work of this other guy on YouTube who I really appreciate, his opinions and his ability to verbalize. First of all, I can't put half the shit he talks about into words, but he has this ability to see things and then describe them that it's really difficult for me to, and so I really like that. And me and Matt have only talked once, but it was for 3 hours. We've talked over online and stuff, and it's been a while. I really liked this video. I was going to play some of it because I hope he doesn't take it down. He hasn't yet, but I have some of the I have similar opinions, I guess, regarding how Crowley has responded to, I guess, online, especially by people who don't take time to read or understand him or his work and just write it off as whatever. You could say whatever, but that's not doing justice to the situation, I don't think, by just saying, oh, he was a charlatan or he was a drug addict. He was addicted to heroin and I think cocaine, but he also made an effort to get off of it by will, and I believe that's the Fountain of Hyacinth. But anyway, I mean, Crowley is a very interesting figure. He has a lot of material, I think, that's worth going over, and it never will be by the majority of people. Which in some ways is good, in some ways is bad. But I'm going to play some of this, and I might chime in, and hopefully Matt doesn't get upset that I'm quoting him or referring to him. The best thing I can do, to say or promote, or all I can say, I can't really do him justice, I don't think, by talking about, because, I don't know, he just covers such a wide range of material and ideas, and he's one of the few people that I actually singled out and talked about, because when analyzing the main subject he talks about, which is human design, with what I use and talk about, which is Gematria, I found a lot of overlap, and it helped me to refine my a lot of what he talks about, it just helps me to think about the individual and collective group dynamics of myself and other people and all of it. It's just, he's a very he's very philosophical, but not so much that it's oh my god, this is boring, but he brings it about, or he presents his ideas in a very, I don't want to say down to earth, but really something very easy to grasp, that I think if you think that everything I talk about is way too complicated and too numerological and too all over the place, I'd recommend his videos, because I don't know, it's just I could see Matt being a good psychotherapist, a therapist of some sort, but I don't want to tell, oh, Matt, you should be a psychotherapist or a therapist, but he would be good at it, just because he's good at thinking outside the box, for lack of a better term, and seeing the connections and the channels, and he thinks outside the box, and I think that's really good. Anyway, I'll get into the blog in a minute. I'm gonna listen to some of this. and I just woke up not too long ago and had coffee. So let's just listen to Matt, because this is a really good video. I mean, all of his videos are really good. I had noticed, real quick, I noticed this is post 49, and usually I was like, I've noticed most of the post numbers, which I didn't think about whenever I made them, but the numbers have kind of an inkling or like an idea, like a resonance with what the post is about. And I was thinking, well, what does 49 have to do with? I mean, what came to mind was John D, because Kenneth Grant, anytime 49 comes up, he's like, oh, this was useful in the calculations of D. And then, of course, Liber 49 was Jack Parsons' book, the Book of Babylon, in a way, sort of like the fourth chapter, or the feminine, or the final Hay, like female counterpart to the Yod Hey, Vav Hey, first three chapters of the Book of the Law. And I was like thinking of that the past few days, and obviously 49 is 7 times 7. It's the mystic number of Venus. And 49, of course, like Babylon, to me seems like the dark daughter, the dark aspect of the final Hay. Whereas Mayot, to me, like you can, if you study Jack Parsons and the Babylon working and all that stuff, to me that just seems like one paradigm, one aspect of the final Hay, what it could represent, the future of, just the future of our trajectory, versus the sort of Maoshan side, which if you read, obviously Outside the Circles of Time and Hecate's Fountain and Beyond the Mauve Zone, all talk about both sides of that. But I get the feeling that like 49 and all this really does represent like the dark daughter and the resurrected, or the, what, like, because the final Hay has everything to do with Malkuth, manifestation, all this stuff about the egg. In a way, it's like the rotten egg or the viable egg. And I think Matt's work, like, he talks a lot about the Venus archetype and the sort of negative aspect of it, or the negative potential for it. And I think that as a society, with all this gender sort of confusion, the political pillars, it's all very relevant, I think, like just when you look at the symbolism. And obviously, like, one of the huge points I like Matt for talking more about and really like honing in on is this sort of polarization people have to go like to extremes of being like very invested and interested and like sucked into whatever, whether it be the occult, religion, any sort of subject, including myself. Like, I've tried to temper my studies and my like activities. And then there's also like the other side of people who see those sort of people that get really fucking like off their rocker, so to speak, like, and then they have that visceral anti-religion, anti-occult, anti-fucking everything, sort of mentality. And it's just like, it's hard to explain like the middle ground to either one of those sort of people. And like, so yeah, I should just keep going or play this video, because I'll just keep talking. I do have a lot to say. I don't know if I'll remember everything I've like went over in my mind the past month over trying to think of like, what should I say for this? And he's one of the few people thinking and talking and pushing for, like, trying to push forward intellectually and, like in his daily life. And I think that that's commendable, and he influences me. I know he probably influences other people to think and do better. And so I just want to say thank you, I guess, if you do watch this, Matt. And I'll just play this video. There's other ones like I don't know where your Venusian the like negative Venus current videos are, if you still have them. But if you do, you should put them back up. Matt had a bunch of videos that I think he kind of like thought were kind of too imbalanced, I guess, or like I don't know what he really thought, but he did delete a lot of his really good or what I thought were good videos. And I remember him saying something about it being they were just kind of too reactive or something. I don't know. Some were like sarcastic, like songs and stuff, but I just think I don't know. I just appreciate that. And anyway, I'll be back in a minute.
You know what's funny? There's this video of Maynard from Tool talking about Aleister Crowley, and the comments are just cancer, man. It's so much. Oh God, it's just so much shit. And there's so many things you could say, but it would just all fall on deaf ears, man. One thing you could say is, have you read any of his work? I don't need to read. I don't need to read. I know he's evil. I don't need to read. Or, of course I've read him. And it made me possessed by demons or something. Seriously, man. Good Lord, man. I've read so much of that guy, and there's nothing evil in any of it. There really isn't. There's that one little chapter in book 4 about the sacrifices, but people don't realize that it's...
Well, real quick, the darkest, I guess most evil things I've read from Crowley so far are in White Stains and Snowdrops from a Curate's Garden. And I think he's just still like being poetic and pushing limits. And I mean, there's a humorous aspect to it too. And still, if that like, there's way worse out there. But anyway,
it's a tongue-in-cheek way of talking about sex magic, because the book was written at a time when putting that kind of stuff in a book would be illegal, practically. Like, it wouldn't get published. So Crowley did what has always been done. He veiled it with certain kinds of language. And
also, I believe the Scented Garden of Abdullah, of Shiraz or whatever, I think that was seized and like burned. The original first few hundred copies or whatever in transportation. And that book is also a sort of like graphic manual and account of like, I believe, the 11th degree type of practices.
Interestingly enough, when sex magic was discussed in many, years before this point, it was discussed in like orders, it was always veiled with imagery concerning death, right? And sacrifices, right? But, people who don't understand and who just don't get it, and it's just, then there's all these documentaries on YouTube about Crowley. And I've seen them. I've seen a few of them. And you know what? Every single one of them deals with about 0.0000001% of his actual work, or things he actually said, or anything about his life. Like, I'm not saying he didn't do crazy stuff, but he did not, like...
And what comes to mind with that is, like, yeah, I don't know, his life is so monumental and eventful, it's really hard to put into, like, an hour-long documentary, let alone a fucking thick-ass book, like the Perturabo book by Richard Kaczynski. And I mean, there's I'm looking at my shelf right now. There's a lot of biographies of Crowley, and none of them do justice, because people see in Crowley what they're able to at their own level and what they want to. But Crowley, like, because he has so many books that are fucking monumental themselves, like altering of the field, um, various fields, obviously, like, and he wasn't alone. To say Crowley, like, he had a lot of help and friends, and prior, like, if it wasn't for Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society, and then obviously uh, all the other people that he was involved with, it wasn't Crowley alone. So, but in a lot of ways, like, his individual impetus as well was very remarkable. But I don't know. So I know I'm meandering, like, wasting time, but it just sucks. Crowley, like, there is this Crowley worship too, and I'll admit, like, I've gotten some of that because I really do admire Crowley. So I've tried to collect, like, any books that reference him, even if they're bad, because I want to know, and I want to have, like, I want to have an understanding of people who choose to revel in a way. It seems like that's the problem, is like the Christian, so-called Christian type people revel more in this sort of like satanic panic sort of bullshit than the so-called Satanists who actually will study Crowley and all that, because they prefer it to be this sort of whatever, thing. And I don't know. Crowley, though, it's like, because I have a fucking whole bookshelf of Crowley books and pictures, and I just appreciate him and what he did. Same with Blavatsky and all their little friends, Frederick Chad.
Sacrifice children, that's for fucking sure. But people, they gotta create the demonic image of, like, I heard, yeah, man, I don't know. I did a video,
The Demon Crowley,
talking about this kind
it's
of
like
stuff,
an entity of its own,
called the problem with stigmatized occult researchers who shit their pants when you sneeze, because it's true, man. These people, they need it.
Well, and I've looked into the whole, like, I've extensively, and I continue the various aspects of that dark sort of torture, cannibalism, blah blah blah. And obviously, if you read, that's an aspect of occult history. And the thing is, like, the primary torturers haven't been the so-called accused witches and occultists. It's been the church. And then, like, it's just like thousands, millions. And I'm not saying it's such a black and white thing, because even then, some priests and people in those groups are also occultists themselves. But basically, what I was going to say is that, I don't know. It's really hard to put into words. Like, it's hard to classify or go through the different things. Just because someone's involved in, like, the occult doesn't, like, I think that in most instances, like, you'll look at the serial killers and stuff, some of them try, like Richard Ramirez, he wrote like a pentagram on his hand, and there's like little traces of the occult in what you could call the realm of, like, the crime subject or whatever. But it seems like it's not as heavily connected as people would want it to be, or like you would expect it to be, I guess. And it seems to me like it's a different motivation, it's a different thing. And so those sort of people, what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say that the people I've seen and studied and looked at, and they're not, I don't know, it's just like you think of, it's like they're missing the true occult wisdom in a lot of ways, and misconstruing it, and like their animal nature takes over. Whereas true, like if you were to study Crowley and all that, you would have a new, like a whole different sense of the way you looked at things. And I mean, not just Crowley, but other, spirituality in general. I don't know. Maybe that's just me assuming, but I just don't get the feeling that like those people are motivated toward occult knowledge or self-betterment or like true knowledge. It's more like an inverted sense of trying to get what they want and not caring about like the consequences. And so to me, it's two opposite things that people are trying to like say that, oh, this is that, or this, that they're associated. When I think it's that letting go, that blind like apathy that is more closely aligned and enabling towards that sort of towards evil than what I tend to associate with esoteric stuff in the occult. I don't know. And so I already know that my studies are like, I've studied for 10 years the actual books and the history, the slow unfoldment of certain ideas and their use in society or in secret societies. And some people like have gone the opposite route, like, and reinforced their lack of knowledge for 10 years.
Yeah, they need a devil. They need a, like, I even interviewed, I had a radio show a long time ago, and Freeman was on it. I actually had Freeman.
Freeman is the weirdest fucking person, because there's no way you can know about Aleister Crowley and Kenneth Grant and all this stuff, but then take everything as being just like like, I don't know, it's just like, again, someone who revels in their ability to, or their like need to invert everything, and it's just very weird to me.
On the show,
and sure, like, there is some or the whole thing of mind control comes to mind, and the pervasiveness of it. Well, in a lot of ways, those sort of people are not understanding the the method of mind control, really. So I don't know.
And we talk about all kinds of stuff, transhumanism and shit, I think. But at the end of it, we started talking a little bit about Crowley, and he said that Crowley's AA is at the top of the top of the pyramid. Like at the tippy top is Crowley's AA. Man, that was like a public order. And the shit he wrote was like public. Anyone can read it. And people who are like so hardcore against Crowley, it just shows how completely and utterly ignorant they are. Because all his work is available. Everything online about the AA, the OTO, it's like available. Even a lot of the core secrets and stuff, people aren't just publishing it anymore because it's not like a big secret, but they.
Well, it's the same with a lot of these, like, things come to mind, like Gematria itself. Like, the practice itself is there, like the knowledge of this is how you use it. Well, all these keys, though, haven't been realized and haven't been, like, even though some of them are very obvious, by simply applying it. And it's the same with, it's just the fact that even though the writings are there, the master doesn't appear till the student is ready, you know, like the meaning isn't gonna resonate until within you, like that readiness is made, like the connection is made.
They just don't go and look at it. They don't, they don't want to have to work to figure out anything. They just want to watch a scary documentary with flames and scary music and shit.
And that's this inversion of what the whole scientism problem is. The dependence on affirmation of, like, and the inability to logically deduce information on your own. Like, people have to be told, they have to have it. But yet, in that process, like in data being put down into paper or into language or into statistics or whatever, it's losing its real, like the actual context. And how do I put that? Basically, people are it's that whole simulacra and simulation quandary of being detached from reality is what it comes down to.
That deals with like almost none, of his actual work. It talks, about it's just a lot of projection and making things way bigger than they really are. Like if you want to like get a real good account of Crowley, you can read "Eye in the Triangle" by Israel Regardie. This is somebody who lived around Crowley and studied with him and worked with him and implemented a lot of his techniques and stuff for years.
In Israel Regardie, if you look up his life, he was a chiropractor, a psychotherapist. He applied all this sort of like Kabbalistic knowledge to, again, practical, everyday things that I think humans are like severely lacking and becoming stunted in, and in a lot of ways are neglecting entirely, when they literally are the structure, the spine, the system that that they need, that they're looking for. Like everyone wants, if there's proof of, if there's it's just like, it's just so funny. Like, anyway.
And this is somebody who's really poured over Crowley's bibliographies. All his work. Israel Regardie has poured over Crowley's work just so much. Releasing works, of his, like after he died, and the whole reason he wrote "Eye in the Triangle" is because of all these other biographies being written about him that he was making him just like sick to his stomach, because these people were like, they were projecting really hardcore. They needed to find the devil, right? The demon, and they're just saying a bunch of insane shit in these biographies that are just it speaks a lot to their own character. It's just a witch hunt. That's all it is. It's just a big fat witch hunt. And you think people who have their shovels and their pitchforks and their torches, rabble, you think you're gonna like talk some sense into those people? Because that's what YouTube comments are, and that's what all this shit, surrounding him is. You can't like go in there and be like, reasonable. Have you ever read any of his work? Do you realize that this thing you think is such a bad thing is really just a tongue-in-cheek way of talking about this that you don't understand? Do you understand that this about his life, and that about his life? Like, I don't know, man. And yeah, he might have done a few immoral things, but so have I. So have lots of people. It seems like to me that people who want to pretend to be the most pure, who don't want to admit to like any really dark stuff they've ever done or even thought, they're the ones who are doing the projection mania. I'll bet if you knew a lot about my life and you only picked out the really nasty bits where I'm just being a straight up asshole, like really just a fucking prick to people. If you took all those and ignored everything else, you took all those and put it in like an hour or a 2-hour documentary, you could convince anyone I was pure evil. Really, you could. And you could do that with lots of people, especially people who are highly intellectual. who are wrestling with their soul, like people like me or anybody else. Anybody else who wrestles with philosophy and all this, how does the universe work and stuff. But when you know what, when you actually go and read Crowley and you get into the deep philosophical stuff in there, at the core of it is service to humanity. Uplifting humanity with knowledge. Being decent.
Liber Porta-Lucius comes to mind. Like, it's like he was on a mission to come and bring this message, and most people wouldn't understand it, but he was going to do it anyway. And to me, there's something more. That's the thing about Crowley, and that's why people like Matt and me and other people are trying to point this out, is because there's various things to admire, but the thing about it mainly is that there's this unassuageable will, which is more commendable and respectable than anything else that you see like it shows that he had devotion in such a way that, like, and not just devotion, but like, I don't know, he realized that the proof is in the doing, and a lot of people can't even see that. They don't want that to be the case. But if you really look at his life and consider the times, consider the fact, that he probably had a lot of pushback in his own life. But, it's like he took it like a fucking, like Buddha, like Buddha comes to mind, but like a clown as well. And I think that people will never see that, but if you really look and see why he was aligning with 666, the number of the sun, and talked about what he did and like the equinox of the gods and the laws for all.
Like really, there's nothing evil anywhere in it, really. I challenge someone to go find.
And that's the thing. It's that will. It's that like that unassuaging facing of evil, of darkness, of fear, of. It's like that's what I'm talking about, and that's what Crowley like represented in a lot of ways. And not just him, but I think is an archetype itself. Like he was a living archetype, and it's just funny that people they can't recognize that. Like only certain people can, but it's not only. I mean, at certain times someone may be able to, but it just sucks. It sucks to try and like.
A work of Crowley that is just filled to the brim with evil things that are like going to infect you with the evil and all this shit people are talking about. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't. But they need it to exist, because they're the rabble with the pitchforks and the shovels and the torches, and you can't just like tell people like that. You're at you're rabble at this, the gates of this mansion or whatever, like and projecting it like hell on this person who isn't even alive anymore, like he's the ultimate evil, or there's nothing worth looking at in any of his work. There's and all this. It's just like it's sort of like what's happening with Jordan Peterson with the SJWs, man. They're just really loud and really obnoxious and really fucking ignorant. To where, and they're like a minority, but they're such a loud, pompous, arrogant, fucking retarded minority that it boggles the mind when you see it. When you see it, you're like, and they're deceitful. They're so deceitful, man. When you try to ask them straightforward questions, that they lie to themselves. Of course, they're going to lie to you too. All they care about is the projection, the demon, the Hitler. In the case of Jordan Peterson, he's Hitler, man. He's everything evil personified. With Crowley, same thing. Everything evil personified. And these are the people who are pretending to be super squeaky clean when in reality they have not really. They're working out some shit, and it's just projection mania. It's the world. It's not me. You know, it's just like Jordan Peterson talks about, man. Or anybody else, not just him, so many other people who, like, I don't know, man. And trust me, there are actually people in high places who don't want you to read Crowley, don't want you to understand his philosophies, don't want you to understand Thelema at all, and they love all this anti-Crowley shit. Yes, people aren't learning really deep stuff that could really, solve a lot of philosophical conundrums about their own.
Well, and see, for me, it wasn't until I started getting into other, I got into Crowley from the get-go when I started studying the occult and the Kabbalah. And apparently some people, it takes them some going around the circles, and then they finally get to that. But for me, especially with reading Kenneth Grant's books and all that, being the basis helped me to, but then it kind of made everything so clear that I was like, okay, well, how can I really apply this? But then when I started reading Gurdjieff and mainly Uspensky, because Gurdjieff's really hard to understand. And then also that book Beelzebub and the Beast by David Hall. It all just really clicked. I saw that it's the digital and the analog, this whole numerical thing that I'm about to get to when I get to the blog. it can achieve, I don't want to say achieve a life of its own, but it can start becoming a more living system. And he's right, though. People don't, they really don't want people to get the power from Crowley. They don't want you to understand the true meaning of 666, because they want you to be giving into their magnetic energy center. But it's it's fucking understanding itself, just
their own life. No, they're trust me, they're happy as hell that there's all this anti-Crowley shit going on and it's evil and all that. If it was so evil and he was so evil, then why was he so public with everything? Why is everything just here? He even made his own magical diaries and journals public. You can go and read them, day after day, week after week, month after month. Okay, where's the child sacrifices? I know, okay, he's doing the ritual of the pentagram and this and that. Ooh, pentagrams are evil or something. Hexagrams, what is that? I don't know. It must be Al-Qaeda or something. It's the brutal ignorance of somebody like that, coming up against somebody like Crowley, who is just absolutely open to the public. And his contempt for that brutal ignorance could, it was pretty strong at times, man. He had some patience, but it's just like Israel Regardie talked about, even a master would get sick of, certain students asking him dumb questions after a certain point. Even a master would get sick of it. He's like, I can imagine maybe a Taoist, master or a Buddhist master, just being almost infinitely patient, but there coming a point where he's just like, oh, shamans are like this too. This fucking ignorance is in every culture. It doesn't matter. You could go into the middle of the Amazon and find a tribe of people, and if that tribe has a shaman, that shaman by by any standards is probably just having the same problems that a lot of other sensitive and intelligent people have when it comes to dealing with the rabble or the people. They have the same kind of shit going on in third world tribes, man. And if there's a shaman or a holy man in any of those tribes, that's why they stay away from everybody. That's why they live up on the hill. That's why they don't, people might come to them and they can do healings and stuff, but to actually be in the rabble every day with all the people, boy, they probably want to go jump in a lake and kill themselves, But at the same time, they have to serve. They know they have to serve. Crowley actually would write about this sometimes, how difficult it is. That the whole point is to serve and to lift humanity. You know how hard he worked to try and give people really good, high quality shit that but nobody goes and reads it because they watch a stupid ass documentary on YouTube like Aleister Crowley and or you ever seen that stupid movie this rock and roll guy made about Crowley? And he like funded the whole thing.
Chemical Wedding, I think.
It was like some stupid ass movie about Crowley, and I watched it, man. It was the most lame, ridiculous thing ever. Like Crowley, came into a guy through like some kind of poltergeist, whatever, and his soul took over this guy's body. And probably, and for the whole movie, he's basically doing a bunch of shit that had nothing to do with Crowley. Like, absolutely nothing. It's just a whole bunch of projection garbage and him being evil and malicious and trying to kill people and all this shit and being devious in every way imaginable. I'm sure he had some issues. Most of his issues probably circled around money because he ran out of his inheritance, and he was the kind of person where, when he ran out of his inheritance, he felt like it was below him to go, like, clean people's drains and shit and be a plumber or something like that. And in a way it was. He's written about this a little bit too. Like he kind of lived off of other people who really liked his work, people who would support him for a while. And he tried to live off of his own published books that might have been selling somewhat. But, he could have had issues with that. I've had and still have issues with money. I just don't like the squeaky clean pretenders who act like they got their whole life sewed up.
Why is it not okay for Crowley to do that? To publish books, write books, him and Mathers translated and published the Goetia in 1904, actually right before the whole Aiwass thing. But why is it not okay for him to do that? But then these retarded, no offense, but these fucking mega churches and all that, that's perfectly fine. When you could a big case could be made to say that that's worse in a lot of, because there's no personal accountability. It's like, God, people use these as just crutches. And you could say, yeah, the occult and all this stuff could be used as a crutch. It's an escapism thing for a lot of people. But at the same time, there's a lot to be said that it's actually also a system, when used correctly, a system for finding your center, your sense of self, and your then also all these illusions and delusions and things that we're made to think and believe. I've just been thinking about so much, being alone more so lately. Has given me a lot of time to just think back and see how tied in you can get, and people can make you think things about yourself and about them, about a situation, about life in general, that are not accurate, because you're when you're surrounded by people, especially being a kid and you say you have siblings, they can affect your mind because they're within your energy, your aura, so to speak. They're in your environment, and sometimes these people and these relationships aren't always healthy, and they can make you think that you're the problem when sometimes it's not. You're not, and it could be them. And so when you come against these people, there almost is no pleasing them, because I've just been thinking about that and how to get around those sort of things, and how much it I don't know, it's just you can't let other people's problems, well, you can, that's the problem, is sometimes you have no choice, or you have very few choices. Like I'm saying, when you're living with somebody, when you have kids maybe, or like I said, brothers and sisters or parents who project their problems onto you, and like, what can you do to fix it when it's their problem and you've done everything you can to fix your own and try and, and it sucks. And whenever you try to, I don't know, it's just like, how do you help someone like that? And it's not always, I don't know, I'm just thinking of the black and white nature of all this, or I say the black and white nature, it's more like the checkerboard. I use the checkerboard as a metaphor for the fact that it's like, it's not black and white, it goes back and forth, and it gets, because it's like, what am I saying? I don't know, I'll just let Matt talk, because it triggered all these thoughts, and what I want to talk about, but I'll try and let it trickle out over time.
Somebody else's, like evil. It's such an easy scapegoat kind of thing. Everything, I don't know, man. People, man. And it's funny because
hell is other people.
He's trying to help, he's trying to bring this knowledge to people and to help people elevate themselves intellectually and spiritually. But I don't know, man. And it's so funny. Like, I remember that one guy who claimed he was like in the Illuminati and that he's ex-Illuminati. What's his last name? His last name starts with a Z. He's got the goatee.
Oh, that Italian guy?
Something. Anyway, he was being interviewed by Carrie Cassidy. And
like, what is his name?
She was like, she always asks people, like, what about Aleister Crowley? Well, it doesn't matter who they're talking to. She could be interviewing Jordan Maxwell, and it's just like, well, what about Aleister Crowley? What's all this about? Like, again, you want to ask him, like, Carrie, have you actually read any of his work? Have you actually, or did you watch a couple scary documentaries, or did you watch somebody mention him in a lecture who probably hasn't read any of his work either? They're just like Tipper Gore trying to find the dirty lyrics in the heavy metal.
Leo Zagami, that's the guy's name. He's actually got some good knowledge, like from what I've read and listened to. He himself doesn't seem to be as like weird in his like pursuit, like, whereas some of the people interviewing him, you can get the sense that they're definitely like, they don't know what they're looking for, and they want the juicy, the like details. They want the like, like he's saying, like Carrie Cassidy, like they want it to be some sort of fucking crazy, tripped out, like fucking who knows what. And those things happen, but it's generally takes people having different motivations and than what Crowley really talks about and focuses on, and was like, so I don't know, it's funny how fucked up it all is.
Metal music, and as soon as they find the one thing, they just point at it all stigmatized, like, see, I found the evil thing. It's like, whoa, man. And she asked the guy who's ex-Illuminati, which I highly doubt, but and what do you think about Aleister Crowley? He goes, rubbish. Rubbish. You just want to be like, dude, have you read it? Any of it? Do you even understand the philosophical foundations of it? The symbolism of it? The Kabbalistic undertones and symbolism with any of it? Have you even read the Book of the Law? Do you even know how to decode the Kabbalistic symbolism in it? At all. It's replete within it, and it's actually pretty sophisticated. But somebody like that who can just be like, rubbish, just rubbish. It's like, rubbish, huh? Rubbish.
I mean, the class, the holy books, like, the different, like...
It's almost like a litmus test, to see if, anybody into the occult,
anybody else who's like matched
or if they're just dabbling, or all just kind of screwed up in their head, and, I'm not saying I'm like
level
some
of
super hardcore
encompassment
cultist.
of things, and I don't know of anyone else
I can look at things and understand them, and I'm not just so, like, dismissive of fucking everything just because you think you know something when in reality you don't. I've listened to people talk, like, give whole interviews about Crowley, and it's pretty much zero factual anything, you know? And it's funny because they're probably getting all their talking points from these horrible biographies that were written about him.
That's
that
why
again, like focus on maybe
there's some good ones and bad ones.
0.00001% of his actual work, his actual body of work. Tiny, 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 tiny fractions of that. They'll just look at the "do what thou wilt" and try to misconstrue that as do whatever you want. That's what he wanted everybody to live as an immoral, just an insane, massive murdering. And it's like, wow, you know, all this is coming from your own mind. It's nowhere in Crowley's work. Nowhere. You're not going to find any of that shit anywhere in anything he's ever written. You know, you're not. But they don't care about that because they're so certain. I don't need to read. I don't need to actually go read. Who needs to read? Everybody knows this. It's common knowledge. It's common knowledge.
See, that was just a short video that I really wanted to save, I guess, in case he did take it down. Yeah, I wish, maybe he does have the Venus videos. Let's look. Those were my other, like, really favorite. Or, he had all these other videos, too, of him, like, talking about, like, just things and with people in the mall. It was a funny video. I don't know. He's just an interesting thinker. Alright, so, yeah, Matt's website, I think, is Terotica.net. And he has kind of more information to go with his videos. And anyway, I just really, like I said, whenever I wrote this blog, I was really, like, fucking excited, I guess, just to find and see all this stuff. So I said I wanted to take a look, as I have with various other subjects, but this time with the subject and study of human design. After listening to some of the work of Matt Reese, and being very intrigued with his covering of the topic, I thought I would do some analysis of some of the major key subjects he brings up. I very much appreciate his work to help bring awareness to the definite conscious and unconscious tendency for people to gravitate toward collective or individualized modes of awareness and behavior, and the correlation thereof between certain personality types, which can be graphed, understood, and then better integrated and exercised so as to effectively sharpen the will or self-fulfillment itself. And so when I say, like, graphed and understood, the whole human design system is literally a sort of like unification of the Kabbalah with the I Ching, and it creates a sort of like personality, like a unique personality fingerprint with, I don't know, just obviously I'm just going to go through it over time, but that's what I mean by that. So I also bring up another video by a friend who gives a basic visual analysis of the duality of manifestation and the distinction of being and non-being and the fundamental understanding of the esoteric side of things. And a lot of that has to do with just this sort of like mirror-like nature of the numbers and the numerical grid that is the sort of like electromagnetic field underlying the physical, which is, again, Malkuth, the congealed, present or waking state. The main thing I'm trying to show with this post is that polarization with anything can be very limiting, and this goes for both dogmatic religion or dogmatic scientism, or basically like it's a sort of same ego defense mechanism of the inability to see beyond or conceive of the limitations of the visible and waking state mind, the visible spectrum, just enough to see, like, it's not our cognizance, our cognition is fragmentary, and it takes a sort of like over time, or an initiation to appreciate that, I guess, and take it into account. Neither of which represent the true idea that both operate under the guise of. I want to show just how complementary the many systems that people like to say and think cannot or should not be integrated when they clearly can, and to a very remarkable degree. Matt mentions human design quite a bit, which I myself, when I first heard him mention it, had only heard passing references to it, which mainly from looking up like numbers and trying to find like people talking about like what either they would mean individually, or I remember seeing references to it, but I didn't understand really what people were talking about until Matt, like, he is the only one who kind of like gives a sort of contextual frame of reference, I guess. Anyway, he mentions, as well as the sites I've looked into, that it's very compatible with the Kabbalah, Tarot, and astrology. Using the Kabbalistic practice of Gematria, we can see that the word design itself is 132, using Hebrew applied to English. The number QBL, or Kabbalah in Hebrew, the root of Kabbalah. Sometimes it has the Ha or the He, which makes it like the Kabbalah 137, which shows the design of the energetic emanations from Ain, absence, or the equilibrium void vacuum thing. I forgot what it's called in Buckminster Fuller's terminology, but to manifestation, Malkuth 10, which is the full congealed elemental tetractys, or whatever. It's like the Platonic field. Studying and working with the Kabbalah is a form of mental alchemy, wherein one aims at purifying the base and mundane consciousness, the elemental, state, into spiritually infused and awakened awareness through balance and confronting of what Carl Jung called the shadow. And so it's this polar, this merging or marriage, the blending of opposites. And it's funny because Jung, I saw that, is 69, which is that whole solar and lunar synthesis number. Adding human, which is 102, to design, 132, gives 234, the number of receive, and it's also the second chamber of the series 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, and those proportions. Receive, the meaning of the Kabbalah as the reception through which one receives the higher power of their true will, and the higher gnosis, or the knowledge. 234 is also biological, and of course the biological energetics are the physical manifestations of the more subtle energy patterns. And I think it's also, when I looked at it last, Masonic. So again, it's like the second step in that ladder of 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 7, 8, 9 is like this alchemical number 2. So anyway, according to the HumanDesignWise.com site introduction, human design is a synthesis of several ancient systems integrating aspects of astrology, the I Ching, chakras, and the Kabbalah. It represents a map of consciousness that links these old wisdom traditions to contemporary thought. It connects in particular to our modern understanding of genetics. And so, there is a lot of, I don't know, it's just there is some code to a lot of these things. 132 is also astrology in simple gematria, which is simply the study of the movements and relative positions of celestial bodies interpreted as having an influence on human affairs in the natural world. Of course, it has been shown for thousands of years that everything from the position of the Earth in regards to solar and lunar positions affects people's psychology and plant growth and biological systems. In that other planetary and celestial positionings correspond with other microcosmic events as well, showing that the large bodies do have numerous measurable and immeasurable effects on the smaller ones. The Sephiroth, or spheres of the Tree of Life, are represented by the planets, but to be understood, and also the minerals in the body too, and the components of the psyche. But to be understood, they need to be viewed as elastic and expansive centers, which can expand like a fractal template of ever-complexifying archetypes emanating from the numerical microforms, the fabric of reality, 1 through 9, to the cosmic projections of the temporal spatial dimensions. And so, again, with the field, the numerical field, and the Kabbalah of 9 chambers, 111, 222, 333, 444. Those are like the marmas of alignment of this whole, of the, essentially like the 10 by 10 by 10, 1000 grid. It's sort of like a balloon expanding if you think about it and study it and look at it over, like, as a linear thing. It's linear, but it's also seems like toroidal in a way. It's a cube, obviously 10 by 10 by 10, but the sort of self-referencing of it is very weird. It's like a balloon expanding when it comes to the data inside of it. Again, when you make a Gematria database of every number, and then you see how these component parts come together in these phrases and stuff, and then also even singular words sometimes that show cohesive, conscious, like, complexity building, I guess. And so also even just the simple grid of 1 through 100, 10 times 10, that's this sort of retrosity grid. If you look at it, it shows the sort of mirror as well. But anyway, 132 is Gematria design, the design key, and each human design. Because obviously it would be like a snowflake, every different, it's like a gears shifting basically, or wheels within wheels. And gears is the same number as, Gematria. Taking 132 as a veiled reference to the triangular number of 1 through 32, we find that the sum is 528, the number of the key in Jewish Gematria, and coincidences in Hebrew-English Gematria. Kabbalah is a literal key to the understanding of seeming coincidences, as it unlocks the underlying structure of the design of the human logos or logic system. And again, that field. In the unfolding map of the manifestation, the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry includes 32 degrees with an honorary 33rd degree, which parallels the Kabbalistic system of the 10 Sephiroth and the 22 paths, with the 33rd degree as Doth, the hidden knowledge or the hidden pillar gained through personal experience. Note that 528 is also the 474 key, 474 being the number for the Hebrew form of Doth, which is like literally DOT or dot. And then it's also the grain of sand, which is a sort of metaphor. The grain of sand. And it's also human design with a shin, so the human design key. And what is Meph? I knew Mepthek, which is the key in Hebrew, is also 528, but I didn't put that here. Which in full is 999. The individualized body, mind, and spirit creates the complex of perceived and memorized self, which creates an illusory veil of separation between itself and that which is outside of the body. So again, a nexus, and thus a sort of magnetic energy center. That which is without is like that which is within, and every other thing outside is in its place, as are we within it. Situations, cosmic or atomic, archetypes, and even psychological patterns can all be found to resonate with a few basic sets of numbers: sounds, letters, colors, and shapes. These are the true basic informational quanta or data, what Kenneth Grant would call the kalas, the transmitted and received doth or gnosis, which is passed through the medium of form. So it's literally like bits of data that create this sort of field. The text itself is 132, so the text. So it's like the source code again. Source code is 666, and carries, like a Kabbalah, a certain magical, i.e. creative charge of direct revelation, i.e. And so wait, I remember this came to mind, and I calculated it, raw data. It was 222, and that is digital plus or and analog. And 222 is this like very simplistic sort of, like 111 is simplistic too. But 222 is like a building on that, obviously. And computed. What else? Acoustics, which I guess with Gimel. Riff. It's got this basic like digital data number to it, or quality. All of them do. It's just what's contained in it, and then what it can build into. The whole Masonic building blocks and all that is very obviously symbolic of the same thing. Our own ability to understand what is before us at a given time is directly related to how aware we are of the components and forces at play, which themselves can come down to our very genetic and energetic arraignments and charges. So it may come as a surprise to some, but many Western and Eastern esoteric systems which have been developed over the course of human history can be found to help decipher and interpret these arrangements, and are also to a great degree compatible with modern scientific and technological innovations. Again, this whole 666 energy field, it's starting to, I don't know, whenever like I'm trying to decode a lot of other things, I don't know if I should talk about, but I don't think Tesla or any of these people knew about this, but I think that it shows that there's a sort of blueprint to a lot of things. If we look at the insights provided in the ancient writings of our ancestors, not literally but allegorically, like an experienced Egyptologist would do to understand hieroglyphs and the underlying meanings of myths, we could greatly amplify our efforts to finding more balanced and integrated solutions to our many societal and technological problems. Because literally a lot of the myths and metaphors are like solutions to those, but on a more simplistic level. Because a lot of it is just the repetition of history, but this was the primary aim of the scientific illuminists of the late 19th and the early 20th century, which has since been kept on a back burner, so to speak, of mainstream cultural development. With the tools we now have at our perusal, we can revive these channels of wisdom to further empower our current technological advancements with a deeper view of how our actions here and now affect us in the long term, especially in the subconscious and epigenetic ways we don't immediately see or understand. And now it's almost like, fuck, no one gives a shit. Let's just put 5G towers in schoolyards and in apartment complexes and like literally everywhere, eventually probably in your brain. And who gives a shit? You probably won't live long enough to worry about all the cancer it probably could cause. Like, they don't even give a shit. So, but they want to act like they give a shit. The alignments are what in Librael is called the space marks, and these things which allow for energies to flow and things to happen according to their will. The interlocking of these different systems which align key vectors of their frameworks. Again, there's different fields within fields. Again, wheels within wheels, fields within fields, same idea. Is thus seen as a holistic harmonization which expand one another by the help and development of the various other systems. Much in the same way, languages can be seen as very much interrelated yet distinct, and tied together in numerical value as well as meaning, like a sort of tenuous logical topography, and how, when one based in English who studies Latin or Greek can better understand the true meanings of their English language system. Who would have thought? So yeah, again, like Kenneth Grant in Beyond the Mauve Zone talks about the fact that these systems unfold literally numerically, like 1, 2, the 3, what are they? 3 fucking marks of existence is one of the ways of putting it, but also on the wheel of fucking fortune card, there's the 3 gunas or whatever they're called. But then there's the 4 elements, then the 5, and it all unfolds Kabbalistically to the point where you've got like the 16 geomantic things, and then also they double into the 32 Kabbalistic things, and then those double into the 64 hexagrams, and then you got the, I don't know, it just gets ever complex, but yet it's still self-referencing. All right, so it's in the introduction to Beyond the Mauve Zone that Kenneth Grant essentially begins by talking about the different patterns or systems of interpreting pretty much the fields or the data of the mind and its correspondences, I guess. He says, there's a formidable array of techniques designed to facilitate investigation of other dimensions, other levels of consciousness. If it is understood that such techniques are merely conceptual devices, it will become easier to grasp their mechanism and their limitations. Magic, no less than science, has erected effectual barriers that deter individuals who are sometimes better equipped to undertake such investigations than the specialists themselves. The artist, the poet, the musician, the dreamer whose dreams are capable of realizing the truths of the great inane are occasionally better endowed. The 14 fields of Sekhet Ayaru, the 22 scales of the serpent of the Qliphoth, the 30 ethers, the 32 paths and Sephiroth of the Tree of Life, the 33 degrees of Freemasonry, the 43 Kalas of the Kala Circle, the 50 gates of Bina, the 50 and 1/2 coils of Kundalini, the 62 Devatas of the Tibetan Demchog Mandala, etc., etc., are some of the better-known divisions of the magical universe. Each has its formula, its guardians, its secret signs, and its passwords. But mystery mongers and their dupes lose themselves in a maze of pathways which may be traversed with comparative ease via the Typhonian tunnels of the back of the Tree of Life. The advantages of this approach seem obvious to all but intransigent theoreticians who, when deprived of the game of classifying endlessly the names and attributes of angels, demons, spirits, and so forth, find themselves striking a great void with no option but to leap directly into the unknown. Trying to rationalize an essentially non-rational situation, trying to evaluate the subconscious or true will by standards of the waking state, who is there to do either? The mind's penchant for classification and analysis can cause it to miss essential linkages. Our subject may not be apprehended in depth by the mental faculty, but it yields to a peculiar form of inspiration which may be described as instantaneous insight of a supra-rational order. The Hindus call it prajna. Without it, no amount of explanation avails to penetrate the so-called mysteries of magic and mysticism. We have therefore to cultivate not a new power, but a faculty that has remained dormant in the majority of individuals for a very long time. It may be reactivated by the formula of Lam, which covers every exigency and is a key to many doors, for it combines the totality of man's experience as comprehended by the sacred syllable Om. So I'll leave it off at that. I wish I could read more, but this is all going to become slowly more relevant, I think, as I go further in my blog. And luckily, Frederick Chod's writings are going to be published soon. So, can't wait. Using the ancient knowledge left by the Masons, occultists, and even the book of Revelation in the Bible itself, the number 666, as analyzed extensively in this blog already, has been said to be a number of great wisdom associated with the sun and gold in 1 Kings 10:14, as well as the dark side of the sun. And again, the magnetic energy center, the magnetic energy field, which is that sort of idea of the dark star of Set, Doth, Set Thoth, or Yog Sothoth, the eon or yuga of Set Thoth, the height and the depth, the dark gnosis, i.e. Doth. 666 is the number of the key of the abyss, again, the field, which when recognized through the knowledge it puts into scope, unlocks the codes of certain hidden knowledge, which then allows access for certain leaps via extractions or extrapolations into domains of knowledge which would otherwise take much longer to obtain. And that's why it's the looking glass. It's this dimensional doorway number. This is the hidden wisdom that has been both consciously and unconsciously kept from people from obtaining for themselves, the knowledge of their own magnetic energy center, the soul, and a great disadvantage to all. So the whole light, again, this light and energy, vampirism, currency, just looking at some things regarding astrology and gematria, the knowledge of the space marks starts to become unveiled. Astrology calculation, astrology coincidence, many things are found to coincide with stellar and planetary aspects. Planetary is also 777. And so is like manifester and a few things relating to the whole human design thing. Manifester. And so 777 being that like next level beyond 666, it has a lot to do with the whole dark doorway of the beast idea and Doth and the shells and their sort of magical usage. Measure the stars, decipher the stars, the galactic centers. So again, this sort of like galactic spin idea. And looking at some things in the subject of human design also shows some interesting corresponding values. Designed the human types. And so like all this stuff about evolution and the whole Eastern, I don't know, I know these are kind of not that important. The human design chart wisdom, the human design computer, QBL plus human designs. They're not that important, but I found a lot more keys, and I kind of have refined my way of looking at some of this stuff. But yeah, the evolution and the origin of species, and looking into Haeckel, Ernst Haeckel. I don't know. I think that there's more to be, sifted through, I guess, but more work to be done. Human design, taking S's shin, again, has a value of 474, which is Doth, knowledge itself, showing how the ancient Hebrew is accurately synchronized with the English Gematria code, which once again illustrates how ancient knowledge and practices can be found to be compatible with modern ones. The subject of metaphysics, also 132, astrology, QBL, Kabbalah, is very difficult for some to come to terms with, even enough to try and entertain the various ideas because of their preconditioned bias, which when causing one to be that anchored is really antithetical to the true spirit of science. If one analyzes the components of any one of these systems in a truly scientific manner, they will find that they are accurate in their systematics when used appropriately, i.e. according to tradition, formula, keeping in line with logic, etc. I was listening to the radio just yesterday. Some guy was trying to talk about numerology and dates and he was just like botching. He didn't know what he was talking about, and I can understand that. He didn't understand any of this. And in and of themselves are neither true or false. They merely serve as tools, again, like a sort of map, an indicator, or mediums through which to view a data set or situation. That's what language is anyway, so you have to kind of have your own strength in perception and discernment, and that comes through experience. But anyway, to deny altogether an entire system or group of systems which you have no adequate experience with is like an Englishman who thinks because he simply can't fathom Sanskrit or Hindi, then all thousands of years of manuscripts are nothing more than nonsensical scribbles. It is in this sense that the expression nothing is an absolute reality, all is permitted, comes to a more illuminated understanding, because it reminds us that there may as well be an infinitude of planes of awareness just beyond the reality tunnel of our immediate present view, or field of awareness. The occult, or that which is hidden, refers to that which is beyond and outside of our knowledge. What separates a true dark or black occultist or magician is that they are ignorant to their position and work, being almost wholly stuck in the selfish, egoic levels and following the lower drives without any regard for the higher and more subtle ones. Some of the most vehement deniers and scoffers of the occult, who like to use the term woo-woo, are not aware of the very archetypal traits and paradoxical hypocrisies they embody, which also correspond to certain astrological and transpsychological resonances, which, if known, could be of great insightful value to address and respond to effectively. So, and I'm just saying, like, people go in cycles, and it's the mind necessarily does. And, think of that what you will, but I just think that the mind naturally should go through periods of that sort of like concrete limitedness, for growth periods, and then also have periods of expansive, being open to new experiences, but then to integrate them. And I don't know, it's just, to me, that's what I mean by like an mental alchemy and openness to some of this, because when you see the underlying field in a lot of, like, in different ways, such as this numerical sort of way, it helps to recalibrate this in its direction. And so it's really fields within fields. Thus, once again, the true nature of the occult is that which is hidden, and sometimes that is simply that which we will not confront or cannot fathom from lack of real personal investigation. Again, magnetic attraction or repulsion. This sort of black magic is a low form which can be so mundane, it is often confused with what we call everyday reality, and can be referenced on the Tree of Life as the lower Saturnian aspect of Malkuth, which is but a small sliver, literally akin to the visible spectrum in the waking state, of the rest of the tree, and it is through gradual steps that one learns to truly see what is the deeper layers and higher in the spheres represent. As has been said previously, the region of Yesod, 9, the foundation, is where the mind opens up to a deeper plane, and again, 9 being, Yesod is the moon, and then it's 9 is 3 times 3, Saturn, squared, basically. And so Malkuth, again, is this sort of like, it's where time crystallizes into form. The foundation is where the mind opens up to a deeper plane of non-physical awareness. Tifereth, the heart, as symbolized by the Dracontia, or the eye of the dragon, at the bottom of the Tree of Life. which itself has the same value as the astral triad, surrounding and including Yesod. So Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and Malkuth are 739, which is Dracontia. And that's the 720. 720 is the mirror, so it's the mirror. So the mirror of, the looking glass, the mirror of matter. Yesod is positioned so that it mirrors the abyss of Doth, and being the foundation of Malkuth, it is where the material world, Maya, is precipitated from via the mind. And again, the Ruach, the cube, symbolized by the moon, which receives its light from the sun, Tifereth, for without the moon, man and life would not be manifest. It is in this, and so again, the moon in Buddhism, and its association with Manas, and it's this alchemical sort of elemental development that's literally taking place through the mineral kingdom, up through the animal kingdom to man, and there's, room for evolution or a sort of entropic, I think, vampirism, which seems to also be happening. It is in this sense that the kingdom is on earth, Malkuth, as it is in heaven, Kether, for Malkuth is in Kether, and Kether in Malkuth, but after another manner. Our individuated selfhood is a mirror of our inner will and desire. We grow, and I guess become who we are to fulfill much deeper impulses than that which is purely material. And as Dion Fortune says, Malkuth, or materiality, is but like a buoy around which the process of manifestation goes. It is but one of the many steps in a great process of emanation, and so for us to unfold what we truly will and desire in our material reality, we must have first aligned internally, i.e. the heart and mind must be aligned for the material world to manifest or cause change in accordance with one's will. So again, that's where like witchcraft and magic and stuff is associated with Yesod and then also Saturn. It's by tapping into that substructure that it will manifest into reality, or at least that's the theory behind it. And in some ways it's practical. The entire purpose of our manifestation is to fulfill our true will consciously, for when you are unconscious, not from an egoic level, but a heart level consciousness, control of this level of being, you are more aware of how your emotions and self-perception guide, and also subconscious, guide both your mind and thus body. And it's a field. So by tapping into the sort of the structure of the field, it kind of warps the torus of time. What is ironic is that while occultists are scoffed at as woo-woo and pseudoscientific, the whole paradigm of mainstream academic science is itself, to a great deal itself, ultra-pseudoscientific, in how corporate interests in many subjects such as cancer research and the weaponization of anything and everything purposely disregard that which would prove to be not only more healthy and cost-efficient, but which would render people more independent, which is what they don't want. Therefore, most major endeavors are financed and directed by industrialized institutions, government and private, and it gets all very wishy-washy, and only a small few are able to really advance, while then domineering everyone else who is conversely oftentimes harmed or even overtly killed as opposition, threats, obstacles, etc. While people are being sold on the idea of all sorts of great gadgets and games, they're really just being outsourced, pacified, and programmed while they're being milked and groomed for their own disposal, when in reality they will never benefit from their labors. Dependence on the comforting idea of centralized authority makes everyone far more insecure and less credible, and people of such characteristics have not only their mass drugging and hypnosis to blame, but they themselves not only allowed, but often and still do, begged for this. Just like the biggest flaw of all our security efforts is our own insecurity, the biggest flaw to our industrialized science is its inability to be used for actual good and instead as a weapon. Cult of science, Gematria ignorance, not know, See, no one wants to know. It often appears that way for those who do. Skeptical of the formula, not an accident, the scientist proof, proven it's found. This number is the magical code. English Gematria sequence, the Kabbalah unveiled, and the key to the great work. Also, Mathesis Theologia in Greek. I just found that when you added those two together, the science of theology, or theology and science. And I said scientism can be even more hostile than many of the religions it bashes. So, like, if you look at Mao Zedong, and I've met some people that are just as rabid and fucking, like, hypocritical as some of the worst Christians you can find. And doesn't approach the models some systems provide from a truly scientific, educated, or perceptive approach, and instead seeks to undercut and dissuade away from some very legitimate subjects, which would actually unveil the whole other side to certain research subjects which have in fact been occulted, so as to maintain still yet another form of control in a new way that now legitimate personal independence threatens by way of empowering and educating the individual without capitalistic oversight or gain. And so it's funny because they'll often say, oh, it's all charlatanry or whatever for, like, money, when often it's kind of like Crowley, for example. I don't see how he benefit, like, the OTO doesn't even make money off of his shit. Like, I don't know, it's just weird. The poles have literally shifted. Science, if unchecked, will grow to be just as controlling and dictatorial, technocratic, basically, with, like, inquisitorial, if not more so than just another failed religion. So that's what I'm saying. Like, there could be a whole nother dark age, but it could be a scientific dictatorship of fucking, organ harvesting, sort of Chinese communism style bullshit. I mean, maybe that's what people want. Maybe that's what karmically humanity will create. I don't know. These are merely the basic keys which, when applied to your own situations and experiences, can help one to get a much more broad perspective of the occult forces at play. There is still much to be known that I'm not able to put out at this point on my own, which you must learn for yourself. Just like how all of these various subjects come together to balance and strengthen one another, so too can we as individuals. We must just simply be able to see things from the other side. We must just be able to see things from the other side, so to speak, by being able to see from other people's perspectives, which all boils down to healthy and balanced expression of empathy. Another good talk about the importance of the positive approach to occult and esoteric modalities, and the importance of the distinctions thereof, personal and group work in the westernized culture. So I put all these links, and I'll play Queen Bee's video. Let's see what she says. I forgot what it's about.
All right. Good morning, guys. I'm going to do a little video today, and obviously I am not going to use any kind of fancy computer graphics because I'm really incapable of doing that in a timely manner. I still have a huge learning curve when it comes to video software. I have a passion for it, but I am absolutely, like, still in kindergarten. So I really want to talk about things that are kind of complicated, and I think I'm going to have an easier time doing it on paper with this. So forgive the terrible visuals, but hopefully you guys will understand the points I'm making today, because I think there's some logic to what I'm saying. And I'm not attacking anybody's belief system. I'm not even really responding to other people. This is like stuff I've been thinking about for a while that I've wanted to present, because I don't really think a lot of people have clarity on duality and yin and yang and God and divine. What I'm really talking about today is divine love. And so, inside of the sphere is existence and outside is non-existence. And obviously, I'm not really going to talk about non-existence because it doesn't exist. So I'm focusing on a model of duality that's within unity today, and that's kind of like can be expressed in a lot of different ways. It can be expressed through the two trees. It can be expressed through the yin and yang. It can be expressed through all kinds of models and maps. And in videos that are coming up, I'm going to discuss more in depth about the fact that the map is not the territory, but I just want to kind of make that point today so people have so that people keep an open mind about what I'm trying to convey and not get caught up in, their perceptions of these symbols and whatnot. Because it's just a tool. It's just a tool for me to convey my ideas. So, inside of the existence, we have the yin and the yang, and obviously we need to remember that the yin is in the yang and the yang is in the yin. The truth is they're not really separate, and the separation and the duality that we're experiencing is part of the dance, and it's what creates the spin. And spin is what our reality really is about. We're never still. We're always moving. And I believe that really the whole duality factor has everything to do with being divided and then coming together again. And so it's like yin and yang to me can come together in unity and marriage or separate in war and division. But nevertheless, they're always contained. And that's kind of like sort of like the main point that I want to make today, is that I think a lot of people are living in they're very stuck in the duality. And let me give you an example of how I'm seeing this. Like we have good and evil, positive and negative, light and dark. And obviously when people are talking about God, the word God is loaded. It's obviously equated with good. Unity. And the devil is spelled evil.
Chaos.
So we know the devil's equated with evil. And that's kind of been sort of like the basic division especially in Judeo-Christianity, but really you'll find this duality in most systems. And so I'm constantly hearing people talk about God, and it's very divisive and it's very dualistic. And they're, God, we're God's chosen ones. God loves me, he hates you. God, is constantly referred to also as the Father and Mother. And obviously the yin side is the more feminine. So I want to make it clear, first of all, I don't have a problem with you if you want to use those semantics. But I want to make sure that people understand where I'm coming from and why I don't talk about God very often. Because if I'm going to talk about God, really technically I'm just talking about one side of creation. And so to me, for my personal view on things,
like unmanifest.
The true God, the true creator,
field,
obviously encompasses all. The true creator encompasses existence and non-existence. It encompasses God and the devil and the good and the evil and the light and the dark. To me, how could a creator God possibly only be one side of it? So really, like, I know it's really hard because a lot of people get very upset when I say this in the past. But unfortunately, the true creation and God actually, and I don't like the word God, but I'm saying it to make my point. What I call, you could call it spirit, you could call it God, you could call it creator, you could call it creation, if you don't want to have a personified aspect to it. Because the truth is, like, everything that can be personified is inside of this sphere. It's inside the duality. Every time we personify God as Father, you're leaning on one side. You're in duality. And that's what language does to us. Okay, so I understand that a lot of you, when you're talking about God the Father, I think you really mean this. And a lot of you are like, oh, God is good, devil bad, Babylon bad. You've pretty much relegated a lot of the yin side to the negative and that which you reject. But you have to understand, creation isn't rejecting it. Creation is containing all of it. Really, when it comes down to it, the true God contains all and is not personified. You can't personify that which is beyond.
Really, the Thoth could be what you
so
think
when
is
people talk about God, oftentimes I just think they get bogged down in that, and that's why we find so much division in religion. And my God is better than your God, or whatever, or God's chosen ones. My gosh, I honestly think really the sad part is, like, even like I was talking about Dick Cheney the other day because he's such a good example of what everybody thinks is evil. And I mean, the man has a mechanical heart. He's a criminal who belongs in prison. But really, and I want to make clear, I don't give a pass to evil people like that. The whole point of this is this side of creation is being, and this side is non-being. And frankly, Dick Cheney and his ilk really belong in non-being. And this is why in life, we all do our best to invoke the positive and banish the negative. But it doesn't mean that the negative goes away into non-existence, because then it wouldn't exist. It's best if, that it exists in non-being. And this is obviously the life side, and this is the death side. And you can see this as two trees, and I'll go into that model a little bit more next time I do a video about this kind of stuff. But, we oftentimes, I find people are just like light, life, God, good, being, all of that is like, they want that to be all of creation, and they want this to all be relegated to non-existence. But this is vital to our existence.
It's basically like the soil.
And so, I want to tell you right now, the real creator, this is divine love right here. It's holding it all together. Divine love. And I'm not talking about this is not the regular kind of love. Again, semantics are so difficult, so try to have an elastic mind. So divine love is I like to refer to it as the everlasting arms. And the reason I say that is just because I like that symbolism, because the everlasting arms are like a giant hug. And actually, the symbolism of Christ on the cross, and with his arms going out, his arms are like in a giant hug. So in a way, like Jesus on the cross is kind of like this, it's sort of like a micro way of symbolizing that. And there is plenty of truth in a lot of the Christian symbology. I don't always agree with the way people interpret it and whatnot. But, Christ on the cross, it's like all about the divine love and the hug. And the formula of Christ, whether or not you're a Christian or not, if you can look at that objectively, you'll find that formula of Christ is about the integration of this duality and the true embrace of the divine love, which when we are really in that, life is going to be going pretty good, and the shit will get flushed down the toilet. And in daily life, really, when negative things happen to us, the wise person does their best to transmute the negative into a positive. So really, I think all of this fear and rejection of darkness is part of why the darkness has grown out of control, why there is so much negativity, is because people aren't owning it in themselves. A lot of people don't want to accept their own dark side. And what I notice is, and this is, we all do this, but I especially see this with like the New Agers are very focused on light and love, and they don't even pay. They're like, don't pay any attention to the dark side. Think only good thoughts. Deny all of your, deny and repress your shadow. Christianity does that a lot too, and the people that I have encountered, especially even just on YouTube, who've been the nastiest people, who've been the ones who are. They're the ones who want all of their shadow to be projected onto others, so that they want to see only this side of themselves, and it's painful sometimes to accept some of the dark side of yourself that got out of control. So, a lot of those people, dark is bad, and they don't see this, okay, that there is a positive side to the dark. And that's really kind of what I think is part of the lesson of and what's happening with the mother energy right now, and the divine feminine sort of resurging, is because the feminine has been so suppressed for so long. And the resurgence of the feminine, we're seeing kind of twofold. We're seeing, like the Hillary Clintons and the Beyoncés and this dark Venus, this negative dark mother. And then we're seeing a lot of women who are coming into their voice and their power, are spreading so much positivity.
Even with men, like in all these, like, no offense to but I think even the transgender situation is kind of clearly a sort of Venusian situation of some sort.
So the feminine side, and a lot of men as well are finding, their feminine side, and really I think this is what's a lot of the work that I'm seeing going on right now, is people are transmuting, because the positive side of the dark is that it really is what nourishes and feeds into the light and the life of our being. So anyway, I'm hoping I'm making sense there. Really what it comes down to is we have diversity within unity. So the dark side of the dark is where we hit that black mirror. That's oftentimes where, that's where we find Dick Cheney with his mechanical heart and all this, suppressive, oppressive entropy that these people bring into reality, has to do with that negative polarity of the negative. Now, a lot of those types too, part of that has to do with this whole separation trip. The so-called negative magicians, or the black magicians. The true black magician is someone who wants to escape and be separate. They want to be separate from all this so they can control it. They want to be this, really, and yet they're not integrating. They want to separate. And so we find, that which wants to separate, and it's still contained. There is no escape from the everlasting arms. So even, these people and these beings who do all this evil stuff to try to control and separate themselves, and these people have no unity in their hearts. They still can't escape the embrace of the divine love. And that is actually really should comfort everybody. I know it's cold comfort, but to me it really takes the edge off, is the fact that we are eternal beings, and we're experiencing this dynamic, and it's just going to spin around and spin around. But it ultimately, when we find that center in ourselves, we're at the center of we're in the eye of the storm, and really that's when the dance becomes really beautiful, as far as I'm concerned. So really, when it comes down to it, part of the reason I don't talk about God all the time is because God is just dog spelled backwards. It's steeped in duality, and it always makes me think of Coyote, and Coyote is the trickster. Coyote being the trickster, obviously the whole point is, if you are stuck in the duality, you're going to continuously be spinning around in circles, and you're constantly chasing your tail. It's about finding that center, and this is, this is what I think all of our whole incarnational process is about. And perhaps part of it too is when you find your center, you realize that the center of your soul is the center of the soul. Every one of us, if we go down deep enough, you'll find that same center. And so I think that's what is very difficult to reconcile. Your worst enemy is still part of you and your creation, and it's part of divine. It's all contained in the divine love or the everlasting arms, however you want to look at it. And so good old Coyote the trickster, is constantly like, yeah, I'm God. That's what the whole demiurge thing is about. And it's not evil, it's not good, it's both. And I mean, a lot of people have a hard time talking about this integration because we do want to, we don't want untimely death. We don't want to bathe in our own crap. The whole point is once you find center, all of this falls into place. Because truly, I mean, if you look at it from a dualistic perspective, one man's positive is another man's negative, That's something that you have to realize too, is like your subjective preference of what is good and evil is very dicey. So anyway, we're going to have all kinds of shit go on. We're going to have all kinds of insanity. We're going to have a lot of negativity. But if you can always just kind of remember that center, no matter what's happening externally, it's transitory. It's always changing. It's never gonna stay the same. We're never gonna have eternal hell. This idea of eternal anything, the only thing that's eternal is this. It means that you're gonna have an understanding of the dark side of yourself. It means that you're gonna be okay with silence. You're gonna be okay with non-being. Your ego is very afraid of this. Isn't it amazing how the people who are the blackest...
And it makes you not take this for granted, like life and experience and people and, or at least for me, that's the whole goal. It strengthens things.
Most negative people in this reality are the most egoic. Their ego is very afraid of non-being, and so in a way, the non-being ends up taking them over. I don't know. I hope I'm clear with some of this. I'm going to keep going and do some other videos here, but this is kind of really esoteric stuff that I wanted to point out. And again, you might have all kinds of points that'll really kind of even throw this for a loop. This is just where I'm at with some of my basic concepts of all this.
It keeps making me think of just that whole formula of 69 and how it's literally Baphomet and Jung and essentially all of what he talks about. And then 70 being, and then the devil card, A-N, and the I, and just all that symbolism. It's just right there in my mind. This guy, I liked this video.
What you got? Love? So
yeah, this video is really long. I don't want to watch it all because I'm already exhausted.
The English world, the Britain, anyone influenced by them, anyone who uses English.
So yeah, Matt's videos I recommend, and same with all these posts and links, and I want to eventually read this and have a video for it. Maybe I can do that soon. I guess that link doesn't work. I'll fix it. Anyway, yeah, I'm going to try to get back to making videos soon.